In this module, we'll talk about HTML. We'll talk a little about cascading style sheets, fonts, text, and additional features. But a lot of it will be through the lab as well as through the textbook. So I'm providing a lot of information here. So HTML, what is HTML? Well, at this point, we should all have a pretty good understanding of what HTML is. It's a hypertext markup language. It's a standard for creating all web pages and web applications. So no matter what programming language that you're utilizing, whether you're utilizing ASP.NET or if you're utilizing Java or you're using Python or whatever the case is, whatever language that you're using, if you have an application that is online, you are more than likely going to use some type of feature of HTML. It's just, that is the standard. HTML5 is a more advanced than your basic HTML. So what's cascading style sheets? Well, going back in the day, I'll say back in the day, back in the beginning of the internet and the websites and so forth, CSS didn't exist. You did all of the features, all the style sheeting. You did all that within the website, within HTML. It was not pretty. Now that they have CSS, it allows you to kind of go follow the model view controller formula, that type of design. It allows you to leave that style outside of your typical website, and it allows you to formulate a better process, a clearer way of doing things, and it makes it a lot cleaner. So that is what CSS is. So you see right here, I just told you exactly. CSS also has JavaScript forms and additional features to the website. So if we move on to here, so this right here is an example of an HTML. Now, if you are coding HTML from scratch, I will not put a doc type in there. It's just because I've been doing this since 1995 or 94, whatever the case is, and I just always start off with HTML tag. Now, if you use some type of automatic tool, it will automatically produce that. So a declaration refers to a DTD because HTML 4.1 was based on the HTML. DTD specifies the rules of the markup language, how the browser is rendered and content, and it's based off of that reference. So if you go to HTML, you can see how HTML is the top level. You have your heading tag, and also notice that HTML, XML, and Cold Fusion are the only three languages that use tag base. Now ASP.NET does have tagging in it, but it's all HTML. So HTML is your top level. You have your heading and your body, which is your second level. Heading is just kind of heading the top of it off. What's the top of your website going to look like? Okay. And the body is the meat and potatoes of your application. How's your application work? Paragraphs are actually, I like to say, the less than, greater than, and then in between is a P for paragraph. And that could be a sentence. LeBron James had a dunk or had a triple double, something along that lines. Your headings H1, H2, H3. Those are typical headings that you would see in Microsoft Word, Excel, and so forth. Your BR is a break line. It's a way to separate your spaces between, say, a heading and a paragraph or whatever the case is. Pretty basic stuff. So starting with some CSS, ends with .css. Now, two ways that you could do CSS. You can use CSS in your website. So you can actually style it within the website, and you'll have it in between the marker, between the link relationship. But you can also have it in its own file, sitting in its own file called .css. Now, usually when I typically teach this, I teach how to do CSS directly, and then as we jump into get a little comfort level, then we'll start playing around with putting it in its own environment. But as you see here, we'll learn in the lab we'll learn how to separate this as a paragraph. What this means is anytime I use if I go back here and use the less than, greater than P, anytime I use that, that means that if I'm using a paragraph, my font type is going to be Georgia, my or Times New Roman, my font size is going to be 1.2. Anything I have in that caption and I use it there, well, that's how it's going to be identified. If I call it P1 and I use the P1 reference in my less than, greater than, then guess what? Anytime I use that, it's going to say, hey, you know what? P1, oh, I know what that is. That uses this. That's how that works. Same thing with H1. Once we go through the lab, it'll make more sense, I promise. I'll show you exactly how to do it in the lab. CSS classes, P dot important. So once again, you could use P as your identifier, dot, and you could put it something specific to that. And then all you're doing here is you're specifying, think of it as a variable, and whatever the values for the variable equals that. And then later on, you're going to specify in your HTML, and it's going to say, hey, I know what that is. And it'll go to that location, grab the information, and go from there. This right here just kind of talks to, talks more through the fonts and text, the different weights that you can utilize, the spacing, the margins, the borders, and the padding. So this is very helpful if you're trying to put something in a certain specific area. So this was a quick lab. This was a quick video, but I promise when you actually watch the video itself, it is a lot bigger. It has a lot more information. Actually, let me find the lab real quick. Here, I actually have a video set up for you. This video, we actually start getting into setting up our environment within Chrome. We set up, we're using Atom, so we're doing live server. So there's a lot of good information that's in that video. It's a pretty, I think it's a 30-minute video at least. So it's a pretty decent video. I definitely recommend watching the video. It will help you as each week does. So that's it for now. Do all your information that you have to do this week. Do your, if you have a discussion, a summary, etc., complete that. If you have questions, Slack me. Have a good week, guys. Bye.